The coffee pot was full. Chloe knew that because she had just refilled it 30 seconds ago, and now she was walking across the most expensive restaurant in Seoul, holding it like a weapon. Because that was exactly what it was about to become. Her heels were silent on the marble floor. Around her, Skyline 72 hummed with the particular quiet of serious money. Low voices, soft lighting, the kind of stillness that costs more per square foot than most people earn in a month. 72 floors below, Seoul blazed like a circuit board, infinite and indifferent. Chloe didn't look at the view. She never looked at the view anymore. She looked at the two men sitting at the bar. The one on the left had adjusted his jacket 4 times in the last 6 minutes, not straightening it, checking it, making sure whatever was underneath stayed where it was supposed to be. His partner hadn't touched his drink since it arrived. Both of them had been watching the corner table with the kind of patience that didn't come from nowhere. That kind of patience was learned, practiced, paid for, and the man at the corner table had no idea. Choi Sung-jin sat the way he always sat, completely still, faintly removed from everything around him, like a man who existed slightly outside the noise of the world. Dark suit, no tie, one button open at the collar. A glass of Chongju he barely touched. He was looking at nothing in particular, which meant he was thinking about everything. Chloe had observed that about him over 2 months of Thursday evenings. He never looked at his phone, never checked the door. He didn't need to. He'd already memorized the room when he walked in. Except tonight, he'd missed 2. Chloe heard it 12 minutes ago while collecting glasses near the bar. Fast Korean, low voices, the casual confidence of men who looked at a black American waitress and saw nothing worth worrying about. She'd learned in her first month in Seoul that this happened constantly. She'd decided in her second month to stop correcting it. The fragments had been enough. Corner table. When he stands for the elevator. Chairman Shin said, "Make it clean." She had stood at the service window for exactly 3 seconds after that. Long enough to look at Sung-jin, calm, finishing his drink, maybe 4 minutes from standing up and walking toward the elevator bank. Long enough to look at the two men, long enough to see the outline beneath the left one's jacket that killed every remaining doubt. 3 seconds. Then she picked up the coffee pot and started walking. She didn't think about who he was. She didn't think about what came after. She thought about Nia, 7 years old and asleep right now in their small apartment in Nowon-gu, her medication lined up by the sink in careful rows, her drawings covering every wall. She thought about what it meant to watch someone die in front of you when you could have moved. She had spent 2 years fighting too hard to live with that. So she walked, and when she reached the corner table, she let the coffee pot tilt. Not drop, not fumble, but tilt with the full intention of someone who had made a decision. And hot coffee cascaded across Choi Sung-jin's chest, his jacket, the white tablecloth, everything. The restaurant inhaled. He was on his feet in under a second. Eyes like cold fire, jaw tight, one hand catching her wrist across the table with a grip that was controlled and absolute and made it very clear that this was not a man accustomed to being caught off guard. "What do you think you're doing?" His voice was quiet. That was worse than loud. Staff materialized from 3 directions. Apologies in stereo. A small, magnificent chaos bloomed around them, and the two men at the bar went completely still. Too much light, too many eyes, the plan dissolving in real time. Chloe leaned in. Her voice was barely a breath. Her Korean was precise and unhurried. 두 남자요. 바 왼쪽이랑 주방 쪽. 총 있어요. 엘리베이터 타려고 일어나길 기다리고 있었어요. 2 men. Bar left side and kitchen corridor. Guns. They were waiting for you to stand for the elevator. Complete stillness. He didn't look at the bar, didn't look away from her face. His eyes, dark, calculating, suddenly very present, moved across her expression like he was reading something he needed to be certain about before he believed it. His grip on her wrist loosened. finger by finger. Below the table, 2 fingers moved. That was all. Just 2 fingers barely visible, a signal so small she almost missed it. Park Tae-sik appeared from near the entrance like he'd stepped out of the wall. Sung-jin sat back down slowly, straightened what remained of his jacket. When he spoke, his voice had returned to something that sounded almost normal. "Clean this up." Chloe reached for a cloth. Her hands were perfectly steady. If you've ever wondered what it feels like to save someone's life and have them tell you to clean it up, it feels exactly like that. Hey, if you're already hooked, do us a favor and hit that like button right now. We drop new ones every week, and you do not want to miss what's coming. Now, back to Chloe. The 2 men were gone within 4 minutes. Tae-sik made sure of that quietly, efficiently, without a single raised voice or broken glass. The restaurant resettled like water after a stone. Quickly, completely, as if nothing had happened at all. Chloe finished her shift. She carried plates. She refilled glasses. She smiled at table 7 when they complimented her earrings and thanked table 3 for their patience with a substituted dish. Her colleague Kim So-ra fell into step beside her, near the kitchen, and whispered, "What happened at the corner table?" And Chloe said, "I spilled. It was embarrassing." And So-ra said, "He didn't look embarrassed, he looked—" And Chloe handed her a tray and kept moving. At midnight, the last guests filtered out, and the floor crew began breaking down. Chloe was mopping alone when Sung-jin walked out of the private dining room. He hadn't left. He stood at the edge of the dining room watching her work, with the same stillness he brought to everything. No urgency, no performance, just that complete careful attention that she was starting to realize wasn't coldness, it was precision. He gave everything exactly as much focus as it required and nothing more. Chloe kept mopping. She let the silence sit for 10 full seconds before she acknowledged him. She'd learned that trick in Atlanta and never let anyone think their presence unsettles you even when it does. "You're Korean," he said finally. "It's better than you let people believe." She didn't look up. People talk freely in front of someone they've already dismissed. I stopped correcting that assumption a long time ago. He moved to lean against the bar, arms folded, watching her with that same thorough attention. "How did you identify them?" "My own security missed it," she wrung out the mop. "Your security watches for people who look dangerous. Those men looked nervous. Nervous is different. Nervous means something is at stake. It means they can't afford to fail. That's always more dangerous than confident." Silence. She could feel him processing that the way you process something that reorders existing information. "Where are you from?" "Atlanta." "Why Seoul?" She paused for just a beat. "Personal reasons." He didn't push. She noticed immediately that he didn't push, filed it away without meaning to. "Your name?" "Chloe." He nodded once, pushed off the bar and moved toward the exit. At the door he paused with his back to her and the city blazing black and gold through the glass behind him. "Go straight home tonight. Don't stop anywhere." He was gone before she could respond. Chloe stood alone in the empty restaurant, mop in hand, soul burning silently 72 floors below. She stayed like that for almost a full minute. Then she checked her phone. Missed call from Nia's school nurse, timestamp from 3 hours ago during service, when she couldn't have answered anyway. Her whole face changed. She was already reaching for her coat. The subway north felt longer than usual. Chloe sat with her phone pressed to her ear while the nurse explained in careful Korean that Nia had spiked a fever during the afternoon and had been resting in the nurse's office before Mrs. Park from the 3rd floor had come to collect her. Nia was home. Nia was okay. The fever had broken. Chloe said thank you 4 times and hung up and sat very still for the rest of the ride. This was the part nobody prepared you for. Not the bills, not the language barrier, not the double shifts. The part where something happens to your child while you're 72 floors up, carrying plates for people who will never know your name, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it except get home faster. She came up from the subway into the cold night air of Nowon-gu and turned onto her street and stopped walking. A black Genesis was parked directly outside her building. Sleek, expensive, completely out of place on this street where people drove second-hand Kias and delivery motorcycles. And leaning against it with his hands in his pockets, jacket changed, as though he'd had time to go somewhere and return, was Choi Sung-jin. Chloe stood on the pavement and looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at her building, then back at him. Her voice when it came was very quiet and very clear. You have exactly 30 seconds to tell me how you know where I live before I call the police. Your employment file at Skyline 72 lists this address. I own the building that owns the restaurant. He said it without apology. I'm not here to frighten you. Then what are you here for? To tell you that what happened tonight doesn't end tonight. Chloe didn't move from where she was standing, 10 feet between them. She kept it exactly there. Explain that. He reached into his jacket slowly, deliberately, making sure she could see every movement. He produced a folder and held it out toward her. She didn't walk forward to take it. After a moment, he set it on the hood of the car instead and stepped back. She walked forward, picked it up, opened it under the streetlight. Nia's name at the top of the first page stopped her breath for just a second. It always did, no matter how many documents she had read with that name on them. That's my daughter's medical file. Her voice was ice. How did you get this? I have people in most of the city's major institutions. I'm telling you that because you deserve to know how I operate, not because I'm proud of it. She looked up from the folder slowly. Who are you, actually? Someone who owes you his life as of approximately 2 hours ago. That's not an answer. No, he said. It's not. He let that sit. The men tonight work for a man named Shin Dai-ho. He controls significant interests in this city, legitimate and otherwise. He's been trying to remove me for 2 years. Tonight you disrupted something his people spent weeks planning. A pause. That makes you visible to him now. You and your daughter. The street was quiet. A dog barked somewhere above them. Chloe looked at the folder in her hands, at Naya's name, at Dr. Lim's notes, at the last page which she now turned to slowly. A clinical trial document. Heidelberg, Germany. Diamond black fan. Anemia. Experimental protocol. She stared at it. Dr. Lim has been trying to get Nia accepted into that trial for 4 months, Sung-jin said. The obstacle is the funding threshold and the institutional approval chain. Both are things I can remove within 72 hours. Chloe closed the folder, looked at him across the 10 feet she had maintained between them. So you're telling me I saved your life tonight, and it put my daughter in danger? Yes. She appreciated that he didn't dress it up. And now you're offering to fix a problem you didn't create in exchange for fixing the one you did? Yes. What do you want in return? Nothing that costs you anything you're not willing to give. She studied him. That's a very careful answer. It's an honest one. The cold was settling in properly now, the kind of Seoul midnight cold that comes off the Han River and finds every gap in your clothing. Chloe stood in her work uniform with the folder pressed against her chest and looked at this man, controlled, watchful, standing in her street at midnight with his hands visible and his distance respectful, which she noticed, which she was absolutely certain he intended her to notice. My daughter stays with me, she said. Every decision about her medical care goes through me. You don't make a single choice about Nia without my knowledge. Not one. Agreed. And the moment she is safe and that trial is secured, she held his eyes, this arrangement ends. Clean. No complications. Agreed. She looked at the folder one more time, at Nia's name. Then she looked up at her building, at the 3rd floor window where a warm light was still on. Mrs. Park sitting up waiting, Nia asleep inside. I need to go check on my daughter, she said. Don't be here when I come back down. She walked past him toward the entrance. At the door, she paused without turning around. The trial documents. Are they real? Everything in that folder is real. She pushed through the door without another word. Sung-jin stood alone on the empty street. He looked up at the third-floor window for a moment. Then he got in the car and drove away. Inside, Chloe climbed the stairs slowly, folder tucked under her arm, mind running at full speed. She thanked Mrs. Park at the door, declined tea, closed the apartment behind her. Stood in the small, warm hallway for a moment with her back against the door. Then she walked to Nia's room. Her daughter was asleep on her side, one arm thrown over her stuffed elephant, breathing slow and even. The fever had broken. Her forehead was cool when Chloe pressed her lips to it. Nia stirred slightly, murmured something in mixed English and Korean without waking. Chloe sat on the edge of the bed in the dark for a long time. She looked at the folder in her hands, at her daughter's face, at the medication on the nightstand. She thought about a clinical trial in Heidelberg, Germany, that Dr. Lim had been trying to access for 4 months. She thought about a man who stood 10 feet away on a cold street and didn't move closer once. She thought about the word agreed, said twice without hesitation or conditions. She thought about Naya's breathing, steady tonight, but not always. Not reliably. Not without intervention that cost more than she could keep sustaining alone. She opened the folder again in the dark and read every page. Keep watching. It gets so much better. She called Dr. Lim at 7 the next morning. He picked up on the second ring, which told her he was already at the hospital, which he always was, which was one of the reasons she had stayed in Seoul for 2 years instead of going home. The Heidelberg trial, she said without preamble. Is it real? A pause on the line. Where did you get that document, Chloe? Is it real? She heard him exhale. Yes, it's real. I've been trying to get Naya considered for 8 months, not 4. The funding requirement alone is... He stopped. How did you get that file? Someone gave it to me. Someone. Another pause, longer this time. Chloe, who gave you that document? A man who says he can remove the funding obstacle and the approval chain within 72 hours. The silence on the other end of the phone was the kind that meant Dr. Lim was doing the same calculation she had done sitting on Nia's bed at midnight, weighing what he knew about how this city worked against what he knew about what Nia needed. The trial closes enrollment in 6 weeks, he said finally. After that, the cohort is full for 3 years. Chloe looked at Nia across the breakfast table. Her daughter was carefully arranging her medication bottles in order of size while eating rice porridge, a game she had invented to make the morning routine feel like something other than what it was. I know, Chloe said. I'm not going to ask questions I don't want answers to, Dr. Lim said. But Chloe, be careful. Whatever door this is, know what's on the other side before you walk through it. I already walked through it, she said quietly. I'm just figuring out the room. She hung up, looked at Nia. Nia looked back at her over a spoonful of porridge. You look worried, Nia said. I'm fine. You make that face when you're not fine. Your left eye does a thing. Chloe pointed at her daughter's bowl. Eat your breakfast. Nia ate her breakfast, but she kept watching her mother with those careful eyes that had seen too much for 7 years old and understood more than she was supposed to. Sung-jin's message arrived at 9 a.m. No greeting, no explanation, just an address in Mapogu and a time. 7 p.m. Chloe stared at it for a long moment. Then she called Sora. I need you to watch Nia tonight. Sora's voice immediately shifted into the particular frequency she used when she suspected something significant was happening and wanted the full story before agreeing to anything. Why? Where are you going? I have a meeting. With who? Someone from the restaurant. Chloe. Sora's Korean carried the full weight of a woman who had watched her friend work double shifts and eat convenience store kimbap for dinner 3 nights a week and had opinions about all of it. Is this about the corner table? Chloe said nothing. I knew it. I knew from the way he... Sora. Fine. Yes, I'll watch Nia. But you're telling me everything afterward, and I mean everything, not the version where you leave out all the interesting parts. The address was a building near the Han River in Mapagu. Clean lines, underground parking, the kind of anonymous corporate architecture that could be anything from a law firm to something that didn't have a public-facing name. A man she didn't recognize was waiting at the entrance. He checked her name against his phone without speaking and directed her to an elevator. 43rd floor. The doors opened into a space that was not what she expected. It was an office, but lived in, functional, none of the performative luxury she had been bracing for. Floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the Han River. A large table covered in what appeared to be city maps, property documents, and several open laptops. Park Tae-sik stood near the window with his arms folded. Two other men she didn't recognize sat at the far end of the table and didn't look up. Sung-jin was standing at the window with his back to the room when she arrived. He turned when he heard the elevator. He looked at her the way he'd looked at her on the street the previous night. Direct, complete, nothing performed about it. "You came," he said. "You have information I need. I have questions you're going to answer before anything else happens." She set her bag down on the nearest chair and looked at him across the room. "Who are you, specifically?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out a chair at the table and sat down, not at the head, just at the side, which she noticed. An invitation, not a throne. "Sit down and I'll tell you." She sat, kept one chair between them. He told her. Not everything. She understood instinctively that everything would take considerably longer than one evening. But enough. His name carried weight in this city that had nothing to do with property portfolios or charitable foundations. Those were real, but they were also architecture built around something older. His family had controlled the financial district and the Mapo Riverside corridor for 20 years, through his father and now through him. 3 networks operated in Seoul's shadow economy. Sung-jin held the financial district. A faction called the Cassette Group held the northern port networks. And Shin Dae-ho. Shin controlled Gangnam's development contracts and construction empire, legitimate on the surface and rotten underneath. "Shin's father and my father did business together for 15 years, Sung-jin said. When my father died, Shin expected an inheritance he was never promised. He's been collecting on a debt that doesn't exist ever since." Chloe listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "So this is personal for him. Everything with Shin is personal. He dresses it as business. And the men last night, that was what, a message? That was an ending. He's done with messages." Sung-jin's voice was completely level. "Which is why you and Nia cannot stay and no one." Chloe had been expecting this. She'd been expecting it since midnight on her street. That didn't make it land any easier. "You're asking me to uproot my daughter's entire life. I'm telling you that Shin's people identified your building this morning." He said it quietly. No drama. Just the flat weight of fact. They know who you are. They know about Nia. Staying in that apartment is not safe as of approximately 6 hours ago. The room was very still. Through the window, Seoul moved in its vast, indifferent way. Millions of lives happening simultaneously. None of them aware of this conversation on the 43rd floor. Chloe looked at the city, at the river catching the evening light. She thought about Nia right now in their small, warm apartment with Sora, probably teaching Sora another Korean word she'd learned and correcting her pronunciation with merciless 7-year-old precision. She thought about the medication on the windowsill, the drawings on the wall, 2 years of building a life in a city that wasn't hers because her daughter needed a doctor it had. "Where?" she said. "Safe house in Yongsan. Secure, comfortable, everything Nia needs already arranged, including her medical equipment and a direct line to Dr. Lim." "You arranged Nia's medical equipment?" "Yes." "Before I agreed to anything?" "Yes." She looked at him. "That's either very considerate or very presumptuous." "It's practical," he said. I was confident you'd make the right decision for your daughter. The right decision? She said it slowly. You mean your decision? He held her gaze. I mean the one that keeps her safe. The silence between them had weight now. Not hostile, not comfortable, something more complicated than either. Chloe was acutely aware that she was sitting in a room with a man who controlled a significant portion of this city's invisible machinery, who had her daughter's medical file and knew her building address and had arranged equipment for a child he'd met once, and who had also stood 10 feet away on a cold street and not moved an inch closer than she'd allowed. She picked up her bag. I need to go get my daughter, she said. We'll need 2 hours. Something shifted in his expression. Barely visible. Relief, maybe. Or the closest thing to it that his face knew how to show. Tae-sik will drive you. I'll take the subway. She stood. I've been taking the subway for 2 years. I don't need a driver. She walked to the elevator, pressed the button. The doors opened immediately. Chloe, she looked back. Thank you, he said, for last night. It was the first time he'd said it directly. No qualifications, no deflection, no transaction attached to it. Just 2 words in a quiet room with the Han River behind him. She stepped into the elevator. Don't thank me yet, she said. We're just getting started. The doors closed. The safe house in Yongsan didn't look like a safe house. That was the first thing Chloe noticed. She had been bracing for something cold and functional. Reinforced doors, blacked-out windows, the aesthetic of a place designed exclusively for surviving rather than living. Instead, the car pulled up to a quiet residential building on a tree-lined street, the kind of neighborhood where grandmothers hung laundry on balconies and children drew chalk on the pavement. Tae-sik had followed at a distance the whole way despite her refusal of a ride. She'd spotted the car 2 blocks from her apartment and said nothing about it. She understood why. That didn't mean she had to acknowledge it. Nia had asked 3 questions on the walk over. Where are we going? Why do we have to bring everything? Is this an adventure? Chloe had answered the 3rd one first. Something like that. The apartment on the 4th floor was clean and warm, and someone had stocked the refrigerator with groceries, including the specific brand of banana milk that Nia liked, which meant someone had been in Chloe's apartment at some point observing the contents of her fridge, and she was going to have a conversation about that later. Nia walked in, looked around slowly, then turned to Chloe with wide eyes. Are we rich now? No. It smells rich. It smells like someone else's apartment. Go pick a room. Nia went to pick a room. 30 seconds later, her voice floated back down the hallway. Mama, there's a stuffed elephant on the bed. Chloe stood in the kitchen doorway and closed her eyes briefly. Same as Nia's elephant at home. Same colour. Someone had paid attention to a detail so small it shouldn't have mattered, and somehow that undid her more than anything else had. She unpacked Nia's medication onto the kitchen counter in careful rows. Her hands were steady. They were always steady. That was the deal she had made with herself 2 years ago in an Atlanta hospital room. Hands steady, voice steady, fall apart later when Nia couldn't see. Later had not arrived yet. Sung-jin appeared at 7 the next morning. Not inside. He knocked. Chloe answered the door still in her work clothes from the previous day because she hadn't slept and saw no point pretending otherwise. He looked at her for a moment and didn't comment on it, which she appreciated more than any polite fiction would have been. Tae-sik was behind him with coffee from the place 2 streets over. The good kind. The kind that meant someone had scouted the neighborhood before they arrived. Dr. Lim is joining a video call in 20 minutes, Sung-jin said. The Heidelberg specialists are on the line as well. If you want to be present, I'll be present. She took the coffee from Tae-sik. Give me 5 minutes. She splashed water on her face, changed her shirt, checked on Nia, who was still asleep with her arm around the new elephant. Then she sat down at the table across from Sung-jin, and they waited for the call together in a silence that had stopped being uncomfortable somewhere in the last 12 hours without either of them deciding that. The call lasted 40 minutes. Dr. Lim spoke first. Careful, precise, walking the Heidelberg team through Nia's complete history with the thoroughness of a man who had been fighting for this specific outcome for 8 months and was not going to let the moment be wasted. The German specialist, Dr. Adler, silver-haired and direct, asked Chloe questions she answered without hesitation. Her knowledge of Nia's condition so complete and specific that at one point Dr. Adler stopped and said, "You have a medical background?" "I was pre-med, before." He nodded, unsurprised. Nia's profile is strong. The trial has one remaining cohort position. With the funding confirmation, we can have her enrolled within the week. The call ended. The room was very quiet. Chloe sat with her hands flat on the table looking at the blank screen. In her chest, something enormous was pressing against its container. 2 years of double shifts, and carefully rationed hope, and subway rides, and yes, and of course, and thank you for your patience, all pressing outward at once. She stood up and walked to the balcony. The morning air hit her face and she stood there with both hands on the railing and breathed. Behind her she heard the others quietly clear the room. The door to the main room closed softly, footsteps retreating down the hallway, then one set of footsteps stopping. Sung-jin came to stand beside her at the railing. Not close, the same considered distance he always maintained, as though he understood that her space was something she had earned, and he had no right to it that she hadn't given. They stood looking out over the Yongsan rooftops in the morning light. "She's going to get in," Chloe said quietly. "Not a question. Confirmation. The kind you say out loud to make it real." "Yes." She nodded slowly, kept her eyes on the city. "You had a sister," she said. It wasn't a question either. She'd been carrying it since he'd said it on the street. That single, unguarded sentence delivered without drama. A pause. Ji-won. "She was 4 years younger than me. Congenital heart condition. From birth. We had every specialist, every resource." He stopped, started again. "She died when she was 9, 2 weeks before a surgical procedure that might have worked." Chloe turned to look at him. He was looking at the city, jaw set, expression contained. A man who had made a long peace with something that had never stopped hurting. "I'm sorry," she said. "It was a long time ago." "That doesn't change what it cost you." He looked at her then. Something moved through his expression, quick and unguarded, there and gone, like a window opening and closing before the cold got in. He looked back at the city. "No," he said quietly. "It doesn't." They stood in silence for a moment. Below them, Seoul was waking up. Delivery bikes and school uniforms and the smell of something frying from the restaurant across the street. "Why didn't you just have someone protect us anonymously?" Chloe asked. "You could have arranged the trial, arranged the security, kept your distance. Why come to the street yourself last night?" He considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Because you stood in the middle of a room full of people who could have moved and you were the only one who did." He paused. "Something like that deserves a face, not a transaction." Chloe looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked back at the city. Inside, from down the hallway, came the sound of Nia waking up, her voice bright and immediate, calling for her mother the way she did every morning, as though each day was something she was in a hurry to start. Chloe pushed off the railing. "I should go." "Yes." She reached the balcony door. Stopped. "The elephant," she said without turning around. "Same colour as hers, same size." A pause. "Who told you that?" Silence behind her. She turned to look at him over her shoulder. He met her eyes and said absolutely nothing, which was the most complete answer he could have given. Something shifted in her chest, quietly. The way a lock opens, not dramatically, just a mechanism finding its position and releasing. She went inside to her daughter. Later that morning, Kim So-ra arrived with 2 bags of groceries and the energy of a woman who had approximately 40 questions and the self-control to ask only half of them. She pulled Chloe into the kitchen while Nia showed Taesik her drawings with the seriousness of an artist conducting a studio visit. "Okay," So-ra said, unpacking vegetables with unnecessary force. "Talk." There's nothing to talk about. Chloe, I have known you for 2 years. I watched you turn down 3 perfectly good men at Skyline 72, including the sommelier who was genuinely very nice. He talked about himself in the third person. Yes, fine, that's fair. But this. Sora gestured broadly at the apartment, the window, the general concept of Yongsan. This is something. Chloe leaned against the counter, looked at the doorway where she could hear Nia explaining to Tai-sik the precise hierarchy of her stuffed animal collection with complete authority. It's complicated, she said. Everything worth anything is complicated. He's not, she started again. He's not a simple man, Sora. I know what he is. Sora's voice dropped. Serious now, the question's gone. I grew up in this city. I know the name. She looked at Chloe directly. I also know that you've been carrying Naya alone for 2 years and that clinical trial. Her voice caught slightly. That trial could actually work. Chloe said nothing. Just be careful, Sora said. With the situation and… a pause. With the rest of it. The rest of what? Sora gave her a look that required no translation in any language. Chloe picked up a cucumber and started slicing it. Go check on your goddaughter, she said. Sora went. But at the doorway she stopped. He asked Tai-sik this morning what Nia's favourite colour was. Chloe kept slicing. Sora. Just saying. She disappeared into the hallway. Chloe stood alone in the kitchen. She looked at the cucumber, at her steady hands. Outside the window, Seoul moved in its vast, relentless way, indifferent as always. But in this kitchen, in this apartment on a tree-lined street in Yongsan, something small and careful and not yet named was quietly taking root. She kept slicing. I know you're feeling something right now. Don't ignore that. Drop it in the comments. Tell us your favourite moments so far. And if you're not subscribed yet, this is your sign. Hit that button. Now stay with us, because everything is about to change. 3 days into Yongsan and Nia had already memorized Tai-sik's coffee order. She reported this to Chloe at breakfast like a significant professional achievement. 2 sugars, no milk. The cup has to be warm first or he makes a face. She demonstrated the face. It was accurate. Chloe looked across the table at her daughter, the colour returning to her cheeks, the cough quieter these last 2 days, the elephant tucked under her arm at every meal like a small, serious companion, and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not safety exactly. Not yet. But the possibility of it. It was on the 4th night that Chloe couldn't sleep. She padded to the kitchen at 2 in the morning and stood at the counter in the dark, not wanting tea or food or anything specific, just the particular clarity that comes from being awake when everything else is still. She heard footsteps in the hallway and turned. Sung-jin appeared in the doorway, jacket off, collar open, the version of him that existed when the armour had been set aside for the night. He looked at her across the dark kitchen with an expression that said he hadn't expected company either. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. She didn't say anything. Neither did he. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a night bus passed. Seoul at 2 in the morning, quieter but never silent, always that low, continuous pulse beneath everything. Are you tired? She asked quietly. Like genuinely. Bone-deep tired of all of it. He looked at her. The question landed somewhere visible. Every single day, he said. She nodded slowly. Me too. Silence again. But different now. Something released into the space between them, the particular relief of being honest in the dark with someone who isn't going to use it against you. His eyes moved to her bag on the counter, the envelope visible at the top, the one she hadn't opened since the night he'd left it outside her door. 2 passports, new identities, a bank account number, 4 words in his handwriting, in case you go. He looked at it for a moment, didn't mention it. She noticed him noticing. I found a better reason to stay, she said quietly. She wasn't looking at him when she said it. The kitchen was very still. His hand moved across the table slowly and stopped, an inch from hers. the distance between a decision and the moment before it. Neither of them moved. Then down the hallway, Tae-sik's radio, a sharp burst of static and urgent voice. Sung-jin was on his feet immediately, the armor back in place between one breath and the next. He looked at her. Stay inside. Then he was gone. Chloe looked at the empty chair, at the space on the table where his hand had almost been. She closed her fingers slowly over that inch of empty table. What followed happened fast. Shin's people had found the Yongsan building. Oh Myung-ja's betrayal running deeper and longer than anyone had understood. The evacuation was immediate and efficient. Tae-sik moving Chloe and Nia through a service exit before Nia had fully woken up, Sung-jin coordinating from 3 locations simultaneously. In the car, Nia sat pressed against Chloe's side, wide-eyed and quiet in the way of children who understand that the adults need silence to think. Then she reached over and put her small hand on Sung-jin's arm where it rested on the center console. He looked down at her hand, then at her face. We're going to be okay, Nia told him, completely certain. The way only children can be certain. Not from evidence, but from a decision. Something moved across Sung-jin's face that Chloe had never seen there before. Unguarded and undefended and very close to undone. He put his other hand briefly over Nia's. Yes, he said quietly. We are. Chloe watched this from the back seat, this child who had been fighting her whole short life reaching across a car and steadying a man who steadied an entire city, and felt the last careful wall she'd been maintaining develop a crack it was never going to recover from. 6 months later, the water in Busan was cold and gold, and Nia ran along the shoreline like someone who had forgotten she was ever sick. No oxygen support. Color in her cheeks. 3 months into the Heidelberg trial, and Dr. Adler's last report had used the word remarkable twice in the same paragraph. Chloe stood at the water's edge and watched her daughter run. Sung-jin came to stand beside her, close enough to be intentional. The way he did things now, deliberate, considered, nothing accidental about any of it. She asked me this morning if Korea is home, Chloe said. What did you tell her? I told her home is wherever the people you love are safe. He was quiet for a moment. Then his hand found hers. Not tentative, certain. The way you reach for something you've decided on. She laced her fingers through his. Down the shoreline, Nia turned from the water backlit by the Busan sunset, alive and golden, and waved at them with both arms. The biggest wave, the kind that used her whole body, the kind that said, I see you both and I'm okay, and everything is exactly right. Chloe waved back. Beside her, Sung-jin raised his free hand, the small unfamiliar gesture of a man learning what it feels like to have someone to wave back to. The water came in. The water went out. Seoul was 400 kilometers away and felt like another life. This one was just beginning. If this story moved you, if you felt Chloe, if you rooted for Naya, if that kitchen scene at 2 a.m. got you, tell us in the comments. We read every single one. Like this video if you want more stories like this and subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.